Hey, hey, welcome to the Summit Host Hangout podcast, where you'll learn how to host a high-converting virtual summit that leads to your biggest signature offer launch yet. I'm your host, Krista from Summit in a Box, and I have a fun episode for you today. I know there are a lot of you out there who love the energy of summits and are always looking for other ways to keep the momentum up between your events, keep the connections going, all of that good stuff. You know I love challenges for that. But there are other options too. And today I've got a special guest to talk about a good one that I ended up way more excited about than I thought I would by the end of the episode. So specifically, we're going to talk about using a visibility tour to build momentum with easy daily actions between your events. And if you heard me say visibility and you were like, ugh, no, like stay tuned, because that is also my thought when I think visibility. And I'm so glad I had to record this intro separately, which I normally don't do because I've already recorded and just heard how doable this is. Like, I'm obsessed. I have a calendar already created, which you'll hear us talk about. It's some good stuff. So to give you some background information on our guest, she is the founder of Entrepreneur School, an education hub for ambitious moms who want to start and grow their brands. She's an award-winning marketer, brand strategist, visibility coach, and the host of the Entrepreneur School podcast. So without further ado, let's dive in and talk with Kelly Sinclair from KS & Co. Welcome, Kelly. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this for so long, Krista.
Yes, this has been good. What was it, like 3-4 months ago probably, that we chatted for the first time and knew it needed to happen?
Yeah, isn't that funny? Like, that's really, we all want to be so fast-paced as entrepreneurs and let's do it all tomorrow. And then the truth is, things take time to develop and relationships to build and like schedules to align. And there's so many layers to all of this. So
Yeah.
it's happening now, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Well, tell us a little bit about you and your business before we dive in today.
Yes. So I am a visibility coach with a background in PR and marketing and branding. So I'm bringing kind of all three of those things together to think about your visibility specifically for service-based entrepreneurs, course creators, coaches, those types of people. And I work with them to get more visible so that they can build an audience of ready to buy clients, ideal clients who are actually looking for what they have. And ultimately, so that you can become a sought after and well-known brand in your space. You're getting referred. People are talking about you when you're not in the room. They're tagging you on posts because you are known for the thing that you do.
The dream, right? I actually stumbled across a post earlier today in this Facebook group I'm in. Someone posted, I sent it to my team, so I have it right here on my screen still. The question was, what resource would you recommend for getting started with the summit? And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people straight. Summit in a box, summit in a box, summit in a box. And that's what we're going for, right? That's what visibility will do for you. But I want to hear, what got you into visibility and when did you first see the power in it? Because I think most people think about visibility and they're like, ugh, no, I don't want to deal with that. But you are like, yes, let's talk visibility. So what was that for you?
Well, innately, immediately, as soon as I decided to start a business, I was like, well, the only way to make this work is if I tell people about it, right? Because you can't be a well-known thing. You can't be a well-known brand and a best kept secret at the same time. Mm-hmm. Right? You have to start putting yourself out there, experimenting with things, figuring out the different ways that you can create connections and build relationships, because you have to do something in order to get clients. And I think it helps that I have, a communications degree. And so naturally sort of think a little bit that way. But I remember actually when I was first getting started in my business, I was like, well, I'm going to focus on building my reputation within the community that I live in. And I think this is something that's overlooked a lot too, especially when we have so much access to technology and the online space. We think we're building online businesses, but we're forgetting we actually have like a network and a community that we can build relationships with at the same time and also faster. So I decided I wanted to be like the go-to PR, branding, marketing person. I don't know, I've shifted that all around, and that's what happens. It evolves in my community. So I started going to things. And one of the first things that was available to me was there was a guy in town who was hosting like co-working sessions. We didn't have a co-working space yet. And he was hosting them at like different cafes. He said, anyone who's running their own business, come get together. We'll like network and we'll work. We mostly just networked. We did not work. But he ended up being my first client, and I helped him open the first co-working space
Oh
in
my
our
gosh.
town. And now he has 5. So it's pretty amazing. Yes.
I love that.
And that was because I was reading the newspaper and I was like looking for stuff that was related to whatever I do, you know?
Wow.
So it can start there. And so the power, the power is the relationship building, absolutely, because that led to actually the second one of his events, me meeting my second client that became a 5-year long-term like retainer client that I worked on different campaigns and strategies for, ran their marketing and branding, developed the brand for the organization, and we won a national marketing award.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. I love this. So we can see that it's powerful. We all know it's powerful, but sometimes you're like, ugh. But I feel like what you're going to talk about today, maybe it's just the positioning of it, but we'll see with the way you talk about it. To me, it sounds more fun than just visibility. So we're here today to talk about visibility tours. So can you talk about what that means and what it can do for your brand?
Yes. So I think where you're coming from here is that the idea of visibility just seems like an extra thing. And also, I want to acknowledge that most people get into business to do the thing their business does, not because they want to become a marketing specialist.
Yes.
Right. So that's where the kind of comes in, where it's not like this is second nature. So for sure, there's going to be some growing pains and some need to actually embrace and embody this as a habit. And so I have thought about it because one, super inspired by Taylor Swift's Eras tour, where it's like, hey, everybody knows that this exists. How do you get your own version of that working? So as much as visibility has to be part of your everyday, how do you get it to be part of your everyday? Well, by doing a visibility tour is where you are going to build up the habit of focusing on intentional visibility. And really, the way that I've defined it is that this is an 8-week sprint to boost your visibility, increase your marketing cadence, and focus it on a single topic for a condensed period of time. So, especially if you're a business that has multiple facets or multiple specialties, we're talking about picking one and becoming known for that thing during those 8 weeks. And it's really a pre-launch strategy. So this isn't about like making sales pitches every time you're out there doing something either. It's about getting exposure, building awareness, building an audience, and building relationships. And so the other piece that, well, I'm going to leave it at that for a second to see how like you react to this idea. Does this sound a little more fun and doable? Part of it is like, I think about the habit building piece as so important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we're trying to learn a new skill set or incorporate something new into our lives, we need to create a routine around it. And so what I designed, and this was all based on doing this experiment for myself, was I was like, well, first of all, it was summer, Krista, and my kids were off school. And I was like, it's nice here. I live in Canada. We don't get nice weather very often. I got a new paddleboard and I want to use it more. And so how do I stay relevant, feel like I'm doing something that is going to move the needle in my business and not take all day long behind my laptop when I really just want to go outside and be in the sun? And that was this idea of like, if I focus on one thing per day that's visibility related, and I'll define that a little bit more in a minute, I can do this in under 10 minutes a day and I can still be making progress and building my business and building those connections and creating those opportunities for myself. And I can go do the other things that I want to do, living my life as an entrepreneur and a mom.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I love some of what you said there because at first, I had a little bit of a leg up going into this because I knew you were going to talk about the 10 minutes per day thing. But if I would have just been a listener hearing that first part when you said the 8-week sprint, I think my reaction would have been like, ugh, visibility for 8 weeks? Like what? So like on one hand, that was part of my reaction, even though, I actually knew the 10-minute piece. But on the other hand, I am obsessed with the idea of an 8-week sprint focused around a single thing, like a single aspect of what you do. Now we have a challenge course, so I could do an 8-week sprint around summits for either just making money as the summit itself, summits for launching, that could be another one, challenges could be another one now. And I love that. And it simplifies the messaging. I'm sure it simplifies the pitches you're making, which we'll maybe talk more about, and everything you're saying it can do. I am just very much loving this. I also, the summit strategist in me sees this as such a great way to get a warm list of potential speakers. So I'm obsessed with this idea.
No, I totally thought of that too when I was thinking about like how to bring this into summit language.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who's hosted a summit before too, I really truly think that this visibility, and this is like, maybe let's dive into a little bit. What does it mean? What does visibility mean? What are the types of actions that you can take? And what am I talking about? And I first want to say, I am not talking about relying on social media. This is not about 8 weeks straight of posting 3 times a day on your favorite social media account. No, I despise that. I also think, social media is just becoming an overprescribed tool that so many people look at as like, if only I can figure out how to break through the noise and get more likes and go viral, then I will become what I want to become in my business. And I don't see any version of that being true, right? It just becomes a frustrating place where we're now attaching our own worth to the number of likes and comments and responses that we're getting by the content that we're making. And that is so unhelpful. It just drives you into a spiral of negativity. As like social media, we all know it's an addictive platform, and there's all kinds of those things there. What it's great for is connecting. Having conversations with people and building relationships. So I was saying to you beforehand, I use social media 10 times more to talk to potential collaborators like yourself and people that we're connecting for opportunities to support each other rather than reaching out to potential clients. So I am not 7 years into my business. I am still not seeing social media as the core driver of my business growth. It is a supplementary tool that, yes, I will admit needs to be used. We do need to have a presence there. You need to have something that says that you're still alive and active, and a place where people can go kind of like creep you and see if they think you're legit and they want to learn more about you and work with you more. But it doesn't have to be like the focal point of all of your efforts. We shouldn't be leading from a social media first perspective. Like, let's create content and then figure everything else out. I look at it differently, where I'm looking at things like going to networking events, having one-on-one conversations with potential collaborators, applying for speaking opportunities, looking at all kinds of different collaborations. Really, that's a core piece of visibility to me, is when you can get yourself in front of an audience of people that has already been curated by somebody else, and you see that alignment. So that is one of the core assessments to make when deciding what kind of visibility you want to do, is like, who's already made this happen? Like, I think this is coming up as a trend. It's going around as, using other people's audiences or other people's networks. And to me, that's just what PR is and always has been in my mind.
Yeah, it does have a really negative connotation, but I think it's really silly to stress over something like that. As long as you're bringing value, everybody wins,
Yeah.
Okay. I like this, and I totally agree with you on the social media piece. And I would say I use social media in the same way. It's for relationships, even relationships with people who are, like you said, lurking and stalking and deciding if they want to join our program. I am using it way more for the relationship aspect of that than any kind of direct sales. And I have no interest in publishing daily reels or anything like that.
No, and focusing on trying to be found in the explore feed, like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that. And if anyone has figured that out, it'll probably change in the next, 30 days.
That's true. All right. So you talked about this a little bit, of like finding people who have already curated the audience you want. What would you say someone needs to look for to make sure they're doing this visibility tour intentionally in a way that actually gets them results and doesn't just waste 10 minutes of their day every day for 8 weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. So that audience alignment is the key. And so audience alignment comes from audience awareness for you, right? So you knowing your own business, your own audience, and who you serve, and then being able to find opportunities to reach those people through any channels. And this is collaboration specific. So me being able to say, how how I can support your audience, Krista, by bringing this conversation to your podcast, that's a win-win for both of us, right? But even in thinking about applying it into other things, like if you want to try and do some media outreach, for example, you have to understand the audience connection, because that's the thing that's going to get the media to be interested in what you're talking about as well, because they care about their audience. That's their job. How is this relevant to my audience? How does it affect them? How do we position that? And so your awareness of your own audience, and then making the kind of connecting the dots to the audience of the platform, publication, or person that you are looking to leverage for visibility is what makes it successful.
Mm-hmm. And oh man, this aligns perfectly with like what I teach everyone you should be looking for in summit speakers. They're the same people. And that leads me to a question like, would past speakers be worth it as people to reach out to on the visibility tour or not, since they would have like ideally promoted your summit to their audience already?
I think it's great. The idea, you know what they used to say, it would take 7 touch points for someone to remember you. And now it's like 8 million probably because
Seriously.
there's so much going on out there. I think duplication and overlap, because people hear things differently at different times. Like if you think about the audience that you're trying to reach, they're in a different place, they're in a different state of mind, they're on a different platform, all of these things kind of, oh, I heard, Krista talk about this person because she promoted her summit. And then I started following that person. And then, oh, there's Krista again. And it's like, interesting. Because what it all comes down to is that trust, right? And so as soon as you have a trust built up with an individual, that trust is then lent over to the person who they're promoting or sharing or partnering with.
Mm-hmm.
And the more times that happens, I feel adds to the overall trust building there. And so I would say absolutely your past summit speakers are great to do multiple collaborations with. Especially if you don't feel tapped out. I think if, every other week you were doing something with the same person, you'd be probably exhausting the audience, but definitely do a few.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And I love that. It makes the work you do to connect with people and give them a great experience during the summit even more worth it, because it opens it up for more collaborations down the road.
Yeah. So like even as an example of that, I hosted not a summit, but a little private podcast party where I did have 6 guest speakers come in, and I did interviews with them, and I put that out as my own hosted event in the fall. And then I did follow-ups with many of them. I did guest trainings inside of their private paid programs, or I was on their podcasts, those kinds of things. And again, I think probably part of the strategy, at least what I loved about summits, was that it was the give when you're the one hosting. It's the give, and then the receive comes from being able to be the one featured on the other side later, right? Mm-hmm. You've already given them something to say, like, I hosted this amazing summit. You were so amazing. Thank you for being there. And now what can we do that features me and puts me into the spotlight as well?
Yeah. Even after my summits, I send my speakers a survey to get feedback and stuff. And one of the questions is like, how can we collaborate next? You come on my podcast, I come on your, like they can click buttons for how I feature them again, but also there's a free form for how they can feature me. That has worked like way better than I ever expected it to. So people are really open to it as well, which makes it easy. Makes your 10 minutes a day easy for a while at least.
Yeah. And I feel like there may be a subtext here of people going, oh, is that like a little bit slimy to think that I should ask for something after I give something? And I'm kind of like, this is what relationships are. This is like one of the best ways that business is done. If you have a good experience with somebody and you trust them and you think that you would be aligned, which you've already done that work to assess that in order to invite them to be a speaker on your summit, then yes, you should lean the other way too, right? Like I was just sharing on a podcast, on one of my podcasts on Entrepreneur School, about how I landed a speaking opportunity in Nashville. So I'm so excited about this, and it'll be done by the time this episode airs. But I saw that a friend of mine was speaking at this event, and I was like, that sounds really cool. So I started following them on social media, and I started kind of engaging with the content of the event host. and creating a little bit of a relationship there, like, by sharing their stuff. And then all of a sudden they did a call for speakers. And I was like, yep, I'm applying. I want to talk to that crowd. I want to be at that event. I want to go to Nashville. And then when the application closed, I reached out to my friend who was already on the speaker roster and said, hey, I've applied. Can you give a recommendation for me? Because that is leveraging relationships. And I don't know how to say that in a way that's like, there's nothing slimy about that. She was happy to do that because she knew that I could bring value, and she has had experiences with me. I've been on her podcast and vice versa and all of those things. And that just becomes like, who knows who you need to know to get to where you want to go.
Yep. That's how it works, right? And like, I'm thinking of the times people have asked me for things and like the give and take way. I never think anything bad of it. It's like, yep, I can do that. Or no, I can't do that. But I don't think anything negative, like, they're just trying to use me. It's like, oh no, this is how business works. It adds value for my people and for this person who's pitching me.
And come to think of it, I think that the way that we got connected initially was that I was doing a collab with somebody else, and I asked her for recommendations on other people to reach out to, and she introduced us.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember who it was now.
At face value, you were like, it was Dolly.
Oh yeah, of course it was Dolly.
Right? And you were like, oh, anybody that Dolly sends my way, like, yes. And so again, those relationships, and that is what you're focusing on when it comes to visibility, is building, like, I would call this relationship-based visibility, not visibility for the sake of visibility, because there is no point in just getting exposure. Like, it's not just about the number of times that you show up somewhere. It's about how connected you're getting to the right people. And so one of the important pieces when you're thinking about your visibility tour is making sure that you're capturing leads, that you actually have a way of bringing people into your world. So you're not like, I equate this to, you could go in a parade if you want for your business and you can wave your little flag, but that's so nice that everybody saw you and your flag, and you have no way of knowing who was there at the parade watching you if you didn't collect their email address, essentially. So having that as part of everything that you do, like a clear call to action where you're inviting people into your world in some way, shape, or form with a lead magnet, an event, or whatnot, that's a really core component as well.
Yeah, you definitely need to make sure that is planned out. And I know I used to feel weird about that, like, are they okay with it if I share a freebie? But I almost feel like it's doing the audience a disservice if you don't, because then you just leave them hanging. They're like, oh, okay, that was helpful, I guess. And then they're done. Like, I also see it as a service to give them that next step. So I'm glad you brought that up as well. Okay, so I'm curious what this 10 minutes a day looks like. We know who to look for in collab partners. We know we need to be collecting leads. We kind of know how long the system is, what we should be focusing on, or like how long we should be focusing on one thing. What are we doing in those 10 minutes?
Okay, so this is where we're focusing on trusted touch points. So this is about external facing actions, so things that involve another person, i.e., there's proof that you did it because there was a witness. There's a witness in your 10 minutes. It was not listening to a podcast, though listening to this podcast is definitely good for you, but it's not getting you visible by you listening to this podcast. You reaching out to Krista or myself about something that we said here, that's getting you visible. That's making a connection. That's, again, like proof that it happened. So focusing on that relationship building, collaboration, and building trust. So those are the kinds of things. It's like inviting someone to have a networking call. Like, hey, I saw you here on this event. Like, let's connect. Or just sending them a DM to start a conversation, reaching out to somebody who you admire, doing something scary, right? Everyone has something on their list right now that it's like, you just keep moving it like to the next week. That thing needs to happen today. You need to just rip off the Band-Aid and do that thing where it's like, it's a big pitch, somebody that you want to speak on. It's a summit speaker, like your dream guest summit speaker, reaching out to your dream guest summit speaker. That is one of the things that you would call as part of your
Okay,
visibility.
so we are doing big things like that. We're making the big asks, but we're also just making connections, building relationships and things like that.
Yes, applying for podcast opportunities or speaking opportunities if you like to do those kinds of things. And again, what's important here is this is about customizing it to you, because I'm not going to give you a map that says this is exactly what you need to do. Like for me, I did, like in my first visibility tour, I did some media outreach, right? Because that's something that is a little more natural to me as somebody with a PR background, and I actually have relationships with our local media. And so I did media outreach, which resulted in amazing coverage. I was featured in our local newspaper, in 2 online articles. I had a radio interview, all just because I actually put myself out there and did that. But it also led to a few, I think I had some numbers here, 8 networking calls that I had with people like that I'd met through different events, or if somebody reached out to me on social media or whatnot. And then we had a conversation, and from that conversation agreed to some kind of collaboration. Essentially, I applied for, I think, 11 speaking opportunities in my first 8 weeks. And that was just like, if you don't put the application in, you don't get the opportunity. So, and these are all kind of like future paced things as well, because some of them don't happen right away, right? Like, I think if we went back, our first conversation was like 4 months ago. And here we are now, right? As we were saying, it can take some time to build these things in. And then doing podcast episodes, those I think I did 4 podcast episodes or guest trainings within that first 8 weeks. And those were, again, kind of booked in advance.
Yeah,
So
I
those
love
are the
this.
kinds of
And
activities.
I love that you're highlighting the importance of what we might see as those smaller actions. And, because of what I teach, I get asked a lot, how do I get pitched to be on more summits? How do I get on more summit stages? Because you can't do it once you see the summit out there. It's too late if they're already promoting the summit. They need to know you ahead of time. So you need to have had some kind of contact with them, whether it's through someone else knowing about you and telling them, or them just knowing who you are, again, through hearing you on podcasts or through talking to you on social media, or these other things that I feel like are really easy to undervalue. And I totally undervalue it. I have a task on my calendar every week. It just says networking. And I have a few different subtasks that I'm supposed to do, like thank somebody, make an ask. There's 5 different things. And can I tell you how many times I just move it to the next week without doing anything? But when I do it, there are results all the time. I just need to buckle down and let myself be a little uncomfortable for literally like 3 minutes. And, it all pays off when you do it.
Yes. Thank you. That's exactly it, right? We're like, oh, this seems hard right now. And yes, I get it. Like sometimes you're like, this isn't the thing I want to do right now. It just reminded me of, like, you've heard that phrase, eat the frog first. And so it's just like, what if you just focused on that and you didn't even do anything else today, and you made that connection, and that led to you being featured on a summit, which then led to you getting like 20 new people in your program.
Yeah.
That 3 minutes was definitely worth it. And like the results are almost immediate, because you're going to get a response when you're connecting to somebody, right? The response is going to be, yeah, let's set something up, or no, I don't think that's a good fit. And then you have a result, because results are not just you win. Results are learning and lessons and pivots and shifts as well. And you can see this all happening, which is what I love about putting it together into this visibility tour. It really stacks your momentum, and things can really start spiraling into such good things. And so if I can share just a little bit of an example of how that happened for me in my first one, and I'm saying my first one because I've literally just been rinsing and repeating and doing this method ever since I started, because it's been so effective that I'm not going to stop. It's a habit now. It's like I go to the gym 5 times a week because I've been doing that for multiple years. Because in COVID, I was like, it's wine or working out. Which one am I going to do? And so literally it's exactly the same with visibility. I focus on that every single day. I have a calendar that I write down what I did. This podcast will be written down today, as well as a networking call I had this morning. And so I'm almost doing like multiple things a day now. But anyways, don't get overwhelmed. You don't have to do this forever. But if you do it, you will figure out what works well for you, and you will be able to rinse and repeat it and see the results. So from the media coverage that I got within the first like 5 days, because that was like one of the first things I did, I'm like, I'm going big right off the bat. my podcast ended up ranking high because the media coverage was about my podcast turning 6 months old. And it's so easy to be like, that's not very big deal. Like, it's not like I got some award. It doesn't seem like it'd be very newsworthy at all, but I managed to make it newsworthy. I got featured. And then my podcast boosted. And as a podcast host, you know, you get pitched all the time, right? Guests. All of a sudden I get this pitch for this guest who piques my attention. I look into him. He's like mentored by Ed Milet, having these 8,000 person events in Utah, like doing big things, multi-millionaire business person. I'm like, okay, I'll talk to you. So that led to the guest, which led to like, and the feeling, the thing that's like the subtext of all of this is that there's this feeling of success and momentum that you're almost unstoppable in between these things happening, where it's like, oh, I know this is happening. And so I am now brave enough to reach out and ask for bigger opportunities. Like, I want to get on a stage like that. That's when I found the Nashville opportunity and I decided to apply for it. And I applied for other like in-person events. And it was all because I felt more confident because I was taking actions that were creating results. And it all just like compacts itself into just an amazing momentum that will skyrocket you. Not only are you getting the visibility benefits, but you're getting the personal growth and the confidence that comes with taking the actions. And so actually, that's why when I designed a program around these pieces, where there's the visibility tour and like the how to do it all, there's also a challenge. Like there's also a weekly visibility challenge that makes you do the things so that both these things are coming together and you're seeing the results from them.
Oh my gosh. I love the sound of it being a challenge. And with the way my brain works, I love the sound of having a calendar where I write down what I did, because having a blank day where I missed it would drive me crazy. So I can't skip it. So I really love all this. Okay. Good stuff about visibility tours. My wheels are turning. I'm sure everyone else's are as well. What is like the biggest takeaway you would want people to get from what we talked about today?
I think that where we started our conversation was visibility, and how we can shift that into, can you shift your mindset to believe that prioritizing relationship-based visibility is what can move the needle in your business? We can get so consumed with all of the behind the scenes work and the listening to podcasts and the trying to do it all and the admin and the whatever. We can also get hung up on this need to publish more content and do more social media. And then we feel exhausted and frustrated by the lack of results. But if we could boil it down to taking one action per day in under 10 minutes and knowing that that in fact is what's going to stack up and create the most epic results for our business, can we make ourselves do it?
I love that so much. My answer is yes.
Yes or yes.
Oh my gosh, I'm pumped. I'm going to go now. I'm ready. Okay, but where can people go to learn more about you and what you offer and how to be in your world in case they want more help and guidance with this?
Absolutely. I am a open DM on Instagram. I invite people all the time to come and connect with me on Instagram at ksco_Kelly. And when you actually take me up on that invitation, great things can happen. Somebody did that recently, and then they asked to be on my podcast, and now they're going to be on my podcast. I'm just saying, I love when I see people taking the action, and I can, give something back from that as well. And I'll also make sure to share a link to a masterclass where you can learn more about this visibility tour and essentially like how to burn your content calendar and shift into like the strategic, intentional actions that will have the most results for your business and your visibility.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being on. I will link to all of that in the show notes, Instagram and the masterclass. This was so great. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. For show notes and resources mentioned in this episode, head to the link in the episode description. Now go out and take action to plan, strategize, and launch your high converting virtual summit.